There are names in history that whisper power, and there are names that scream madness. Rome, the eternal empire, gave the world both. And among her emperors, one name has haunted every century since: Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus. The world knows him by a single name: Caligula, a boy born into power, raised among gods, and destroyed by it. His reign lasted only 4 years, but in those years, Rome saw the divine become the damned. This is not just the story of a mad emperor, it is the story of how absolute power devours the human soul. Before madness, there was promise. Caligula was born in 12 AD, the beloved child of Germanicus, Rome's most admired general. His father's soldiers adored him, nicknaming the boy Caligula, Little Boots, after the tiny soldier's uniform he wore in camp. He grew up in a world where power was sacred. Augustus had become a god. Rome's armies had conquered the known world. The boy who walked through camps and palaces was destined for greatness. But Rome was not a kind mother. Germanicus died when Caligula was only 7, poisoned, many believed, by the Emperor Tiberius himself. His mother, Agrippina the Elder, dared to accuse the emperor. She was exiled and starved to death. His brothers, Nero and Drusus, were executed or left to rot in prison. By age 18, Caligula was the last surviving child of Germanicus, and he was sent to live with the man who had destroyed his family. Visual, dark, cold marble halls. The old Emperor Tiberius watching the young Caligula with suspicion. Narrator, lower tone. Tiberius, the emperor of fear. He ruled not from Rome, but from the island fortress of Capri, surrounded by spies and secret police. It was there that Caligula learned his first lesson of power. To survive, you must wear a mask. He watched men tortured. He smiled when Tiberius smiled. And in the silence of Capri, the golden child of Rome learned how to hide his hatred. In 37 AD, the old emperor Tiberius died. Rumors whispered that Caligula himself had smothered him with a pillow. Whether true or not, Rome rejoiced. The Senate declared Caligula emperor. The people celebrated as if a god had descended. Gold flooded the streets. Prisoners were freed. The empire believed the Golden Age had returned. For 6 months it did. Caligula restored temples, ended treason trials, and honored his parents' memory. He was generous, charismatic, adored. And then, something broke. Late that year, Caligula fell gravely ill. Some said it was poison. Others said it was the gods themselves striking him. When he awoke weeks later, Rome no longer had a savior. It had a god who believed he could not die. The mask he had worn for years shattered, and beneath it was something terrifying. In ancient Rome, emperors were mortal men who might become gods after death. Caligula refused to wait. He ordered temples built to himself. He placed his statue beside Jupiter's in the Pantheon. He declared that Rome should worship him not as emperor, but as living divinity. He spoke to statues as though they were equals. When thunder rolled, he shouted back at Jupiter, "Strike me if you dare!" He began addressing senators as if they were insects. He demanded sacrifices to his own image, and Rome, too terrified to resist, obeyed. For Caligula, power was not rule. It was theater. Every command, every cruelty, a performance to prove he was more than human. Power, when unchecked, feeds on fear, and fear, when absolute, becomes madness. Caligula's reign turned Rome into a stage of terror. He revived treason trials, not for justice, but amusement. He ordered executions on a whim, sometimes during dinner, sometimes between jokes. He confiscated fortunes, mocked widows, humiliated senators. No one was safe, not friends, not family. His sister Drusilla, once his only comfort, died suddenly, and Caligula declared her a goddess. He mourned like a lover, not a brother. After her death, something inside him broke beyond repair. He said, If I cannot make the gods love me, I will make them fear me. His paranoia grew. He believed the Senate plotted against him. He replaced trusted guards with spies, the praetorians with executioners. He even plotted to move the imperial capital from Rome to Egypt, where, he said, people still knew how to worship a god. By now, Rome whispered that their emperor had gone insane, but no one dared speak it aloud. To insult Caligula was to vanish. To flatter him was to survive another day. Historians would later record Caligula's acts as the most horrific in Rome's history, not because of their violence, but because of their chaos. He humiliated generals by forcing them to march against the sea itself, ordering his legions to collect seashells as trophies from a conquered ocean. He built a floating bridge of ships across the Bay of Baiae, simply to gallop across it in golden armor, mocking the gods and man alike. He emptied the treasury on games and spectacles so grand that famine followed. He would summon senators to dine with him, then watch them tremble, not knowing if they would leave the table alive. He made nobles fight gladiators to amuse him. He replaced sacred ceremonies with grotesque displays of his own invention. Rome had seen tyrants before, but never theater so cruel. In Caligula's Rome, fear was the new religion, and the emperor, its only god. By 40 AD, the empire was collapsing under Caligula's insanity. The Senate had lost all dignity. The treasury was nearly empty. The people, once joyous, now hid behind closed doors. Even his own guards, the praetorian elite, began to fear that their god might destroy Rome itself. Among them was Cassius Chaerea, a seasoned officer whom Caligula publicly mocked for his voice. Humiliated one too many times, Chaerea made a decision that would echo through eternity. They would kill their god, not in battle, not in defiance, but in the heart of his own palace. January 24th, 41 AD. The imperial games had just ended. Caligula, in high spirits, laughed with his performers as he walked toward his chambers. The guards surrounded him, not in salute, but silence. Then a dagger flashed, then another, and another. The god-king of Rome fell to the marble floor, bleeding not gold, but red. For a moment, there was silence. Then the screams began. His wife and child were slaughtered. The Senate panicked. The empire trembled. Rome had killed its own god, but the madness he unleashed would never truly die. In death, Caligula became more powerful than he had been in life, a symbol of everything Rome feared in itself. Was he truly insane, or simply the mirror of an empire that worshipped power too much? Seneca called him a monster. Dio wrote of him as a warning, but perhaps he was only the inevitable result of Rome's own illusion, that mortals could play at being gods forever. Every empire has its Caligula, every age its madness, and every ruler who believes himself divine ends the same way, alone, bleeding, and forgotten. History remembers Caligula as insane, but perhaps he was only the truest reflection of Rome, a god made by men who could no longer tell the difference between faith and fear. The empire would recover, but something in its soul, in all of ours, had changed forever. If you wish to uncover more of history's hidden truths, subscribe and step once more into the dark.